So my name again is Chris Murphy, and we're going to take it beyond the basics. Some of you guys, I think, were in the introduction class that we did last week, so we're going to get beyond that today. So this class does assume that you know the basics in Excel already. All right, so let's see. Just a few ground rules. I want to make sure everybody gets most of the class, so pretty please at least turn down your cell phone, if not turn it off, okay? And if you could resist the temptation to do too much web surfing or updating your Facebook page during class, that would be great. And if you could minimize the amount of side conversations, sometimes in these sessions, one person gets stuck and the guy next to them tries to help them and they get their own little class going on the side. So if you need any help, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask for questions or ask for help. That's my job, to make sure all this stuff makes sense for you guys today. So our schedule is we're going to go till 8 o'clock, and I think we'll just rock and roll right straight through till 8 o'clock without any breaks. Everybody's got anybody need any help downloading the file that we gave you the link for? Everybody's got that loaded up, because that's the file we're going to be working with today. So let me go ahead and pull that up here. Jump back into this. Okay, so the first thing, I'm going to zoom in a little bit just so you guys can see what I'm doing here. So we're going to basically be working through these different tabs here. So this class does kind of assume that you know some of the basics already in Excel. So the first topic that I wanted to talk to you guys about in Excel is a feature called range names. So how many of you guys who have been using Excel have been using range names? Not so much? Okay, so here's the deal. Range names are descriptive names that you can give to different parts of your worksheet. And range names are cool because you can use a range name to quickly navigate around a very large workbook to find different things you need to find in the workbook. And also, range names make it real easy to create formulas. So I'll show you some ways to do that. So I'm in this Excel 2 Formulas and Pivots folder or file here, and I'm on the range names tab. I want to create a range name for the data for Q1. Now notice near the upper left corner of your screen here, there's this box that I'm pointing to right now. That's called the name box, and one cool thing you can use the name box for is just to navigate to different cells. So if I know, for example, that I want to go quickly to cell G20 or any cell, I can just click in that box and type in the cell address of where I want to go. So if I type in, for example, G20, and then I press the Enter key, see how it moved me to that cell in the workbook? So the name box you can use as a navigation tool. You can also use the name box to create range names. So let me show you how to create a range name. Let me show you some different ways to create range names. I'm going to highlight all my numbers for Q1. So I'm going to highlight from cell B2 down to B5. So I want to highlight all my numbers for the different sales groups, but not my total. So one way to create a range name is to first highlight the cells that you want to give a descriptive name to, and then you can click up in this name box and just start typing a name. Now there's a few rules for naming a range. Okay, so you want to remember, one thing to remember is you want to start with a letter. Okay, you can't have any spaces in a range name. And you can't have a range name that's the same as a cell address. So there's a cell called A1. I can't create a range name called A1. Okay, so just remember, start with a letter, no spaces, and it can't be the same as the cell address. And then, oh yeah, the other rule is you can't have a range name that's more than 255 characters. But that's like never an issue. I'm just telling you what the rules are. Okay, so this is my Q1 data. I'll just create a range name called Q1. So I'll just start typing Q1 up in the name box. And remember, no spaces in a range name. So I'm typing Q1 with no spaces in it, and then press the Enter key or the Return key on your keyboard to complete that. I see sometimes people, they do the whole thing and they forget to press the Enter key. So that's it. You just created a range name. Now let me show you how you could use that range name once you've created it. I'm going to go click over in a blank cell somewhere over to the right. I'm going to unselect the data I have selected. And then I'm just going to go to another tab here. I'll go to the next tab. I'm going to click on the Summary tab. So I moved away from where that data is. Now I want to quickly get back to the Q1 data. So check it out. If you go up to the name box up in the upper left corner and click on the drop down to the right, cool, there's your range name. So you can just click on Q1 and see how it navigates me back to that part of the workbook. So it's an easy way to jump to different parts of the workbook. Is that working okay for everybody? I didn't hear anybody go ooh or ah, so I wasn't actually sure whether it's actually. That's kind of cool, isn't it? I mean, as cool as you can get with a spreadsheet. So I want you guys to see how you can type in a range name, but check this out. A lot of times you've got good descriptive information for your column headings or your row headings. So another cool trick, instead of typing in the range names, you can tell Excel, just take whatever is at the top of the column or whatever's at the beginning of the row and use that for a range name. So let's take a look at that. I'm going to click on the cell where it says quarter 2, and then I want to highlight everything from that cell all the way over to cell E5 where I've got my Southwest quarter 4 data. So I could drag across all that to highlight that, but a cool trick that I like to use sometimes is the shift key. So if I click in the upper left corner, I can hold my shift key down on the keyboard and then click in the lower right corner, and that just gets everything in between. So the click in one corner and then shift click in the opposite corner is just a cool way to highlight a big chunk of data. Okay, so now that I've got the data highlighted and my column headings selected, I want to tell Excel to take what's in the top row and create range names for me. So to do that, I'm going to go to my Formulas tab. So I click on the Formulas tab, and on the Formulas tab, we've got this section here where it says Define Name. So I'm going to click on the drop down where it says Define Name, and just click on Define Name here. Okay, and actually, wait a second. I'm not used to doing this on a Mac, so hang with me here a second here. If I go, you know what, on the Mac it's slightly different than the PC. So I think actually with this version on the Mac, I have to go to, is it Insert? Yeah, Insert and then Name. Sorry about that. On a Mac, it's Insert. If you're, some of you guys are, I see some of you guys are running PCs, right? So it's slightly different, but you should, if you're on a PC, you should see there's an option that says Create Name. Can you guys see that? So on a Mac, you have to go to the Insert menu, choose Name, and then choose Create. On the PC, there's a button right there up on the ribbon. So I'm just going to go ahead and choose Create here. And when I do that, it puts me in this Create Names dialog box. Excel notices the stuff in the top row looks a little different, so it guesses that I want to use whatever's in the top row for my range names. So I'll just click on the button marked OK, and I've quickly created more range names. Now if I go up to the name box and click on the drop down, cool, now I've got range names for all 4 quarters. Say that again? Yeah, so for the Windows version of Mac, there's, you know, Excel 2016 for the Mac and the PC are pretty similar, but some stuff is different. So on the Mac, if you on the PC, if you go to the Formulas tab, you should see a button there. I think it just says Create. Actually, let me take a look at this. Yeah, let's see what we got here. Yeah, so just go click on. Create from selection. Yeah, so create from selection. Yeah, there you go. And then that takes you into the dialog box. Okay, sorry for the confusion. You found it okay? Yeah. Okay. All right, so now go ahead, and those of you guys who are on the PC, just check to verify that you've created range names by clicking on the drop down here, and you should see you've got range names for all 4 quarters. Okay, so that was so much fun. Let's go ahead and create range names using the row headings here. So I'm going to click on the cell where it says Northeast, and then I'm going to use that Shift key trick again. I'll hold Shift and click on the quarter 4 Southwest number. So now I've got my row headings and the data to the right there selected. So on the Mac, I'm going to go to Insert and then Name and then Create. And this time Excel notices the stuff in the first column looks different, so it guesses that you want to use the left column for your names here. So I'm going to go ahead and click on OK. All right, now if you go up to the name box and click on the drop down, you can see you've quickly created 8 different range names without having to type them all in. Okay. All right, and so again, we can use that to navigate around to different sections of the workbook. let's go ahead and take a look at if what if you create all these names and you want to use them in a formula. Okay, so I want to use the I want to get my totals for the East Coast and the West Coast. So the total sales for the East Coast are going to be the Northeast and the Southeast. Okay, so if I did create range names, I'd have to create a formula, and I have to go out and highlight all that data. And so this time, instead of doing that, we're going to use a range name. So with my cursor in the cell where I want to see my answer, I'm going to use the sum function. So I'm already on the formulas tab. I'm just going to click on AutoSum on the formulas tab. And when I do that, that creates a sum function, and Excel makes a guess about what data I want to add up. Okay, it's guessed the wrong data. Now, if I had not created a range name, I could go out and highlight the data. But because I thought ahead and created a range name, I can on the Mac, I can go to Insert and then Name, and if I choose Paste, I get a list of my range names. Okay, so one of the range names I want to insert here is the Northeast range name. So I'll choose Northeast and then click on OK, and it shows me the range name. Now you can always just type in the range names if you want to, but it's handy if you don't remember what the range names are. If you just want to look them up, you can just refer to the dialog box and pick them off a list. Okay, so with the sum function, if I want to refer to more than one range, I need to separate each of them with a comma. So after I've got my Northeast range going in here, I'm just going to type in the comma symbol on my keyboard. And after I type the comma symbol on the keyboard, I can go back again to the Insert tab, Name, Paste, and I've got my Northeast. I also want to choose Southeast. So I click on OK, and that's it. So I'm creating a formula that refers to those two range names, and that's it. I don't need to add any more range names. I'm just going to press the Enter key on the keyboard, and cool, it gives me my total. I never had to go over and actually highlight the data once I've created that range name, and I think you'll agree that using a range name makes it really easy to understand the formula. If you've got good descriptive range names, it makes it easy to understand what the formula says here. Yeah, yes, go ahead.
I'm just curious, like, why you use a comma instead of quote?
That's just the syntax for all of our functions in Excel. When we've got more than one piece in the function there, we always just separate each of the pieces with a comma. We're going to go over some other functions, but that's kind of just the general syntax or structure that is used. And when you say why did that, the guys who wrote Microsoft Excel, that's just the syntax they came up with. So.
Because you have multiple cells, but if it was two cells, it would be a comma.
Say that again.
Because there's two sets.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So okay, I see what you're saying. If you've got a one range, so if I refer to cells A1 through B5, then I go A1 colon B5, and that says everything in between here. But here I'm referring to two separate ranges, so I separate each of those with a comma. Yeah. All right. So unless you guys have any other questions, I'd like to ask you to go ahead and practice creating that the West Coast total. Okay. Do that on your own. So you're going to use the sum function, and then make reference to the in this case, we want to add up the Northwest and the Southwest. Okay, so go ahead and try that, and as always, let me know if you have any questions or need any help on that. This is a relatively dinky data set, but some of you guys are going to have these big, huge data sets, and it's cool to be able to use a range name just to refer to the whole thing. And it just makes the formulas easier to remember as well. So let me show you guys. Actually, I'm going to do the whole thing. I'm going to check it out. If I just click on AutoSum, instead of you go into the Insert menu and pasting the names, you can also just start typing the name too if you want to. So if I'm here and I want, like I'm demonstrating for the West Coast, I've got my sum function going here, and then if I just start typing the name of one of my ranges, I just type in NO for Northwest. See how it's showing me a list of my range names that start with those letters, and then it also shows me some functions that start with that. So here I want to highlight Northwest west, so I can either use my mouse or I can just use I'm pressing the down arrow key on my keyboard to highlight that range name after I start typing the first few characters, and then to do an autocomplete to tell Excel to use that, I'm going to press the tab key on my keyboard. So I highlight the range name I want to use in my formula, then I press the tab key and it does an autocomplete. Okay, and I'll type in comma again, and I want the southwest, so I'll just type in SO. I'll use the down arrow key to highlight southwest, and then just press tab to complete that. So if you want to, you can use the keyboard to do this stuff too. I'm a terrible typist, so I tend to, and sometimes I can't remember what range names I created, so I like to just see a list of them. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and press enter, and I've got my grand total. Okay, so we might come back and do some other stuff with range names, but before we go forward, does anybody have any questions on using range names in your Excel spreadsheets? No? All right, so the next thing I wanted to talk to you guys about and go over with is how to create what some people call 3D formulas. So check this out. Check out the next group of tabs. So I've got the summary and then 4 different quarters here. So I'm going to click on the summary tab, and what you'll see on the summary tab is we've just got some text here, but there's no numbers. And what we want to do here, you guys, is on the summary sheet, I want to show the totals for all 4 quarters. Okay, so let's take a minute to look at what's on those quarterly sheets. I'm just going to click on the quarter 1 tab to review what's there, and click on quarter 2 and quarter 3 and quarter 4. So you can see the data is laid out on all the sheets pretty much exactly the same. The numbers are different. Okay, so I want to show you guys a couple of different ways to create a 3D formula. We want to get the grand total for all 4 quarters on the summary sheet, and that's really common in a lot of business situations where your senior management, they don't want to see all the details. They just want to see the high level stuff. So a lot of spreadsheets I see created in business situations, the analysts and the people preparing the spreadsheets will have the raw data, and they'll create a spreadsheet, which some people call a top sheet, that just summarizes stuff, and then you can present that to the executives, and if they want to see more detail, they can go into the individual sheets. So let's go back to the summary sheet, and I want to see the total for Northeast Consulting for all 4 quarters. So I want to show you guys actually a couple different ways to do this, and depending on how the data is laid out, you can do it one way or the other. So one way to get a grand total for all 4 quarters here is just to use a formula, just a simple addition formula. So I always start my formulas with what character? I was hoping I get more group participation on that. So yeah, you always start all your formulas with the equal symbol. So I'm going to type the equal symbol, and creating 3D formulas on multiple sheets is really not that hard. After I tap the equal symbol, if I wanted to pull a number from this sheet, I could just click on the cell that has a number. But in this case, the number I want to pull out is on another sheet. So after I started my formula with the equal symbol, I'm going to click on the quarter 1 tab. So when I click on the quarter 1 tab, look what happens. Up on the formula bar, the reference shows the name of the sheet that I went to. So it says equal quarter 1 and then an exclamation mark. So now that I'm on the quarter 1 tab, I'm going to click on the cell on the quarter 1 tab that I want to add up. So I'm just going to point at the Northeast Consulting number. So now I've got this reference that shows quarter 1 exclamation B1. So it refers to the name of the sheet and the address of the cell that you want to pull from. Okay. So once I've pulled my number for quarter 1, I want to add stuff up. So I'm going to type the plus symbol on my keyboard. And after I type the plus symbol, I'm just going to navigate to the next sheet. So I'm going to click on the quarter 2 sheet. And on the quarter 2 sheet, I'm going to point and click on cell B2 again. Okay, so now I've got this formula that says quarter 1 B2 plus quarter 2 B2. So, one of the things I see all the time doing Excel classes is when people do these 3D formulas, they click on the sheet, but then they forget to click on the cell. So you got to choose the sheet and the cell. So it's not really that hard. It's a little confusing because you're flipping pages while you're clicking on the links here. Okay, so now that I've got the quarter, my numbers for quarter 1 and quarter 2, I'm just going to keep doing that for the other 2 quarters. So I'll type in plus again. And then after I tap the plus symbol, I'm going to click on the quarter 3 tab at the bottom. And on the quarter 3 tab, don't forget to click on the cell. I'm going to click on cell B2. So now I've got my first 3 quarters. Type in plus one more time. And after I tap the plus symbol again, I'm going to bug on the quarter 4 tab. And then I'll click on cell B2. So I'm just saying, give me the total of B2 for all those sheets. Okay, that's it. I'm going to go ahead and press the Enter key. And cool, I've got my grand total for all 4 quarters. Okay, are we having fun yet? Okay, so that's a simple example of a 3D formula. Now, I want to use that same formula for all of my other cells here. So once I've got my Northeast Consulting number figured out, I'm going to position my cursor in the lower right corner of that cell. Look for that little black dot there. If you get your cursor right on that black dot, that shows that fill handle, right? So if I want to copy stuff, I'm going to point in the lower right corner at that fill handle, and then I'm just going to drag over to the right all the way over to column E. So now I've got my totals for all the areas for Northeast. Okay, and once I've done that, what's the quickest way for me to copy that formula down to the other rows?
Just
Double click, yeah. So you guys know Ebo's talking about that. You could take your cursor on the fill handle there and drag down, but Ebo's got a good trick. Because there's data in an adjacent column here, instead of dragging down, you can just do a double click on that little fill handle and it will copy down to the bottom. So double click and you're done, okay? So that's no big deal. I've just got 3 rows I was copying down to, but if you've got 100 rows or 500 rows, that's a cool trick to be able to quickly copy your data. I wanted to show you another approach to this. Now, you know, in this case, I've just got 4 quarters here, right? What if you had a workbook in Excel where you had 12 sheets for all the months of the year instead of quarters, right? Or what if you were doing a 5-year planner, you had maybe 20 different sheets here. And I want to show you a way that you can create the same formula without having to go to each individual sheet. Okay, so the way that we just did this, you guys, you'd have to do that if the data was in different cells on different sheets. So if the data was in cell B2 on one sheet, it was in cell K5 on another sheet, I'd have to go tell Excel where it is. But in this case, because the data is in exactly the same location on all the sheets, I've got another way to do that. Yes, ma'am?
So I drag on my data down.
Yeah.
The total, is that going to make a difference in the future?
Say that again?
And then like the consulting tab, I dragged all the data downward, the arrow, to get the total number, instead of doing a whole double click thing.
You know what I'm gonna do right now is just undo this and get back to where we were. I just want to blank the data out. So
Okay.
we're just gonna. So no, it won't affect what we're gonna do. Let's go ahead and I wanted to show you another approach. So I'm gonna just use the undo command up on the ribbon here, up on the quick access toolbar, to back out. So I'm just gonna click on the undo button several times to basically clear off the summary sheet. I just want to get the summary sheet back to where it was. Okay. So if the data is in the exact same location on all the sheets that you want to add up, here's another approach to do it. So I'm starting out on the summary tab where I want to see my Northeast Consulting number, and I'm going to use the AutoSum feature. So I can either click on AutoSum on the Formulas tab, or of course that's also on the Home tab over on the right. Okay, so I'm going to use the sum function. And so now I hit the sum function, and there's no numbers on this sheet, so Excel doesn't know where to get the data from. Okay, so after I've got my sum function going, I'm going to click on the quarter 1 tab. So I click on the quarter 1 tab at the bottom, and check that out. It makes reference to the sheet. Now, you guys saw a little while ago that we can use the Shift key to select more than one cell, right? You can also use the Shift key to select more than one sheet. So I've got my quarter 1 sheet selected. I'm going to hold the Shift key down on my keyboard, and while I hold the Shift key down on my keyboard, I'm going to click on the quarter 4 tab. Okay, so check that out. Now it says I want to get the sum of quarter 1 through quarter 4. Okay, so I've told it what sheets I want to add up. Now I'm going to just click on the cell that's on all those sheets that I want to make reference to. So I'm just going to point and click on cell B2. if I can do that. Let me try this, actually start that again. AutoSum, and then click on quarter 1, shift click on quarter 4, and then the Mac is a little funky. I'll be honest with you guys, the Mac, let me try this again. The Mac is getting a little weird on me here. This is easier to do, honestly, on a PC, so I just need to click on cell B2. So here I'm saying, give me the sum of quarter 1 through quarter 4. I want the cell B2 on all those sheets. So now I press enter, and it gives me the same result. So this way, I didn't need to click on each individual sheet. But again, this only works if the data is in exactly the same cell on all those sheets. So that kind of goes to when you create your workbooks to think about how the data is laid out. So here, after I've got the Northeast Consulting number showing, I'm going to use the fill handle again and drag over to the right. And then I want to copy that down, so I'll do the double click trick to copy it down. Okay, so two different ways to do these 3D formulas. All right, so anybody have any questions on what we're doing? Yeah, go ahead, Iqbal.
I'm wondering, like, why do you call this 3D formula?
Oh, just because it's multiple sheets. So we got the horizontal dimension, the vertical dimension, and the third dimension goes back, so it's 3D. Okay. Okay, so you'll hear people a lot of people call them 3D formulas. All right, so let's just keep going, you guys. So check out the next tab we haven't looked at is the employee list tab. So click on the employee list tab, and we've got a list of some of our employees. So you guys recognize any of these employee names? Any of them? So just for fun, we've got just some. These are some of the Academy or the Oscar nominees from recent years. So I don't have a real lot from last year. But here's a scenario. You imagine you get some data that you download from another system, or somebody has keyed this information in, and you need to clean it up. So for example, wherever we got this information from, they typed in the first and last name all in uppercase, okay? And also, they've got the first name and the last name in separate columns. So imagine your boss says to you, I need you to clean up that data. I need the first and last name to be in one cell, and I need you to fix the capitalization. So like for Nicole Kidman, the N in Nicole is capitalized, everything else is lowercase, and the K for Kidman, okay? So how many of you guys, if somebody asked you to do that, you just roll up your sleeves and start retyping the data? All right, so no, or find somebody else to retype the data, right? So, so I want to show you guys some ways to manipulate text using functions. Okay, as you may know, functions are essentially pre-written formulas that are built into Excel, and there's in Excel 2016, I think there's over 400 different functions to do math calculations, to do financial calculations, to manipulate text, to do statistical analysis, all kinds of really powerful functions. So I want to show you a technique that you can use to build any function that's available in Excel. And this is one of these things that is actually different depending on whether you're in Excel on the PC or the Mac. The screens are going to be slightly different. So for those of you guys who are running PCs tonight, I'll try to float around and help you, but I'm going to demonstrate this on the Mac. So we've got the raw data on this sheet, and I want to clean it up and show the results on the next sheet. So let's go over to the requirement tab. And actually the first thing I want to do on the requirement tab, on the employee list tab, notice in column D, I've got all these guys' employee IDs. I just want to take those numbers from the employee list sheet and show them on the requirement tab. Okay, so we're just going to create another type of 3D formula or 3D reference. I'm going to click on the requirement tab, and then in the requirement tab in cell A1, let me zoom a little bit here. In cell A1, I just want to pull Nicole Kidman's ID number from the other sheet. So we're going to start with the equal symbol. And after I type the equal symbol on my keyboard, I'm going to go bug on the employee list tab. And then once I'm on my employee list tab, I'm going to go ahead and just click on the employee ID in cell D2. So I'm just saying take whatever's on the employee list on employee list sheet on cell D2 and pull that over. I press enter, and now I'm showing her ID number on this sheet as well. And the cool thing about this is it's a reference to another cell, so if I change it on the employee list tab, it's going to update it here. Okay? So now I want to get the ID numbers for everybody, and here, because there's no data in an adjacent column, I can't do the double click trick. That double click trick only works if there's data in an adjacent column. So I'm going to actually just get on the fill handle in the lower right corner of this cell, and then I'm going to click and drag down to row 21. That's as far as my data goes. So cool, now I've got ID numbers for all these guys, okay, from the other sheet. Now I'm going to click my cursor where I want to show the full name. So that's cell B2. And so when we join several, what I'm going to do here is join several pieces of text together. I want to join the first name, a space, and the last name. So I really want to join 3 pieces of text together. So computer geeks have this word for doing that. They call it concatenating. So it's just just a big fancy word for joining several pieces of text together. So when you guys go home tonight and they say, so what was going on with the Excel class, you can say we were doing string concatenation. Everybody will be very impressed. But it's just a big word for gluing several pieces of text together. So like everything else in Excel, there's more than one way to do stuff. I want to show you guys a couple of different ways to join text together or to concatenate text. And you can decide which one you think is easiest. But then I also want you guys to know what's going on. If you get a spreadsheet from somebody else that's done it one way or the other, you'll understand what's going on. Okay? So one way to join several pieces of text together is to use a function. And there's a whole bunch of different text functions that are available in Excel. So I want to show you how you can look up a function and get some help with it. So with my cursor in the full name cell where I want to see my result, I'm going to go to the Formulas tab. And I click on the Formulas tab. On the Formulas tab, there's this cool feature called the Function Library. And so it organizes all the different functions that are available in Excel by category. Okay, so we got financial, logical, text, date and time, and so on. So I want to do something with text. I'm going to go on the Formulas tab in the Function Library and click on where it says text. And cool, I get this drop-down list of all of the functions in Excel, all the different things I can do with text. So if you can see there's the concatenate function right there. Okay? So that's one way to look up a function. Just go to the function library and look through the list here. I'm going to go ahead and click on concatenate. And here's, when I do this, this is one of the big differences between the PC version and the Mac version. So if you're on a PC, you'll see a dialog box that's a function arguments dialog box. On the Mac, it opens up this formula builder window on the right side there. And it's telling me what the function does. It gives me a description of what the function does, and it also tells me what the syntax is here. So it tells me I can join up to 255 different pieces of text together. And then you'll see these dialog boxes for all the functions. So if you want more information, you can always click on the help link and it will open up a detailed help screen on this. But right now, Excel is waiting for me to tell it where the text is that I want to join together. So it's waiting for me to either type in text or go point to the cell that's got the text. So the first piece of text that I want to join together is Nicole's first name. So I'm going to click on the Employee List tab. And in the Employee List tab, I'm going to point and click on Nicole's first name in cell A2. Okay, so that just makes reference to that sheet name and then the cell. Okay, now I don't want to join the first and last name together directly. I want a space between the first and last name. So I'm going to bug in the text 2 box. And after I click in the text 2 box, I'm going to just press the space bar on my keyboard to add a space. Okay? And then on the Mac, if I want to keep adding more pieces of text, I've got to click on the plus button here. So that adds a third field here. Okay, so I'm saying I want to join whatever's in A2, a space. Now I'm going to click in the text 3 box. Okay? Actually, you know what? On the PC, let's go back to text 2. On the PC, you can just type the space bar and it automatically adds the quotes. I think on the Mac you've got to type in the quote. So I'm going to type in quote space quote. Okay? So I'm just saying, so any text you literally want to show, dashes or commas or whatever, you need to enclose that in quotes. Okay? Then I'm going to go ahead and click in the text 3 box. Okay? And so I'm saying I want to join A2 and a space. Now the third piece of text I want to join together is Nicole's last name. So I'm going to go click on the employee list tab again. And on the employee list tab, oops, let's try that again here. Plus, get back here, space. Yeah, so the text 3, then I'm going to, in the text 3 box here, I'm going to click on the employee list tab and click on Nicole's last name. So this is actually, let me do some cutting and pasting. I want the space in one, and I want, let me go ahead and just get rid of this. Try that again here. Space quotes. Add a third piece. Keeps, some of this stuff is a little funky. I'll be honest with you. Some of it's a little funky on a Mac compared to a PC. So you see, yeah, okay. Text 3. Gonna go to the employee list tab here. And wow. Click on her last name, and it won't let me do the space here. So the
copy paste.
Yeah, or cut and paste. Yeah, exactly. So cut and paste that guy, and paste here. Yeah. So I'm saying here, take whatever's in cell A2 in the employee list sheet, a space. Let me get rid of this stuff, and then whatever's in cell B2. Okay. So from there, if I'm done, I can press the Enter key or click on the checkbox at the top here. And that broke. Let me see. Oh, got an extra plus in here. I need a comma there. Okay. There we go. Oops. Wait a second. I've got too much stuff going on here. Sorry about that. There we go. All right. So the idea of the formula builder or the expression, the function arguments dialog box on the PCs, you can just click on the cells and build a function. If you look up on the formula bar, serious Excel guys who do this stuff all day, every day, they just type in something like that. But by using the dialog box, you can build the whole thing step by step. Okay, so now that I've got Nicole's full name there, because I've got data in an adjacent column, I can copy that down really easily by using the double click trick on the fill handle. So I'll point at the fill handle, in the lower right corner, double click, and now I've got all the names filled in. Okay, so using a function is one way to join several pieces of text together. That's the way some people do it. I want to show you guys a second way to do it. So another way to join several pieces of text together, instead of using the concatenate function, you can create a type of formula. And to join several pieces of text together in Excel, we can use the ampersand. You know the and symbol on your keyboard? So I think of the and symbol as just kind of a piece of glue that holds several pieces of text together. So I'm going to undo what I just did, and we're going to try this another way. So I'll just go ahead and use the undo command to clear that out. So now I don't have anything in the full name column here. So instead of using a function, I'm going to create a formula, and like always, my formula starts with the equal symbol. So I'll type equal, and after I type the equal symbol on the keyboard, I'm going to go to the employee list tab, and I'm going to click on Nicole's first name. So I'm just saying take whatever's in cell A2. Okay. Now I want to join a space on after that. So to glue a space on after Nicole's first name, I'm going to use the and symbol as a piece of glue. So I'll type the and symbol on my keyboard, and after I type the and symbol, I'll just type in quote space quote. Okay. So any text you literally want to show, like they say spaces or commas or dashes or whatever, you always need to enclose those in quotes. So all I'm doing there is saying take whatever's in A2 and join a space onto that. Okay. Then if I want to join the last name on, I'm going to type, I need another piece of glue, so I'm going to type the and symbol again. And after I tap the and symbol on my keyboard a second time, I'm going to click on the employee list tab. And the employee list tab, I'm going to click on Nicole's last name. So I'm just telling Excel, take what's in cell A2, join that with a space, and whatever's in cell B2, take all those pieces and put them together. So I go ahead and press the enter key, and cool, I've got the same result using a formula, a type of formula. I get the same result that I did with the concatenate function. So two different ways to do the same thing. And I see, you'll see spreadsheets you might get from somebody does it this way, somebody does it the other way. You guys know two ways to do it. So if you see that and symbol, you'll know what's going on there. Okay. Matt, do you have a question or comment?
Is there a way to separate a full name into like first name and last name?
So instead of joining it together, split it apart?
Yeah.
Yeah, there is a way to do that, and I want to show you how to do that. Let me show you a few more examples of manipulating text, and I'll show you. The answer is yes, and I'm going to catch up to you in just a little bit. But that's a pretty common thing too, where you've got joined together and you want to break it apart. So there's, like everything else in Excel, there's more than one way to do that. So I'll show you some tricks on that in a little bit. But here I can copy this down, and I've got everybody's full name spelled out. Now I still have the issue of the name being all in capital letters. So there's a whole bunch of things you can do with text in Excel. Another cool function is called the proper function. And the proper function, you can use that to tell Excel, just take the first letter of each word and capitalize it, make the rest of the word lowercase. So that's exactly what we want to do for these names. So you could look up the function, but the proper function is pretty easy, so I'm just going to type it in. So I've got Nicole's, the expression where I have her full name shown here. I'm just going to go up on my formula bar, and I'm going to click after the equal, and before the rest of the expression. After the equal symbol, I'm going to type in the word proper. So I'll just start typing the word proper, and then I'm going to type in an open parentheses. Okay, and so for all my functions, I type equal, the name of the function, an open parentheses, and the syntax is I always have to have a closed parentheses at the very end. So I'm going to click at the very end of that expression and type a closed parentheses. Okay, so all I'm doing is saying take this expression that I have here and convert it to proper case. So if you press the enter key, cool, you've got Nicole's full name properly capitalized, and you should be able to just double click on the fill handle in the lower right corner to copy that down to the other names. So that's a lot more fun than retyping all the names, don't you think? Who's got any questions on what we're doing with joining text together?
Can you do an idea on how to use the function?
So yeah, so all I did in this case, because that one's pretty easy, I just typed it in. So let me undo that. So when I'm doing the Ebos, I'm just going up. I've got you got the whole expression already joined together?
Yeah.
Yeah, so go up on the formula bar where you've got the cell with Nicole's name selected. Click on right after the equal symbol. Okay, then just start typing the word proper and open parentheses, and then you need to close out with a close parentheses at the very end. So after I type the open parentheses, after the word proper, I'm going to just click my cursor at the very end of the expression and type a close parentheses. Okay? And you should be able, after that, to press the enter key, and it should show the name with the proper capitalization. Is it working?
Yeah, it's working.
Yeah. So you got the first one, and then just do the double click trick to copy that down. Okay, so
When I use the tab function, I use the tab button, and I delete one part of the and then add one, and then it's an arrow.
okay, you got to be careful about that. Yeah, but it's working now. Okay for you?
Yeah.
Okay. So the next thing we need to do, you guys, is generate user IDs, so network IDs for all these employees. And the rules for network ID are we want to take the first letter of their first name and their full last name and to create their username. So for example, for Nicole Kidman, her user ID is N Kidman. Jeff Bridges' user ID is J Bridges. So what I want to do is extract just the first letter of their first name and then join their last name together with that. So we've got, lucky for us, there's another function that will do that in Excel. There's another function to manipulate text is called the left function. With the left function, I can tell it what text I want to work with and how many characters from the left I want to extract. So just like before, I'm going to get some help with that function. So with my cursor where I want to see the user ID, I'm going to go on the formulas tab to the text category. Amu, you doing okay with it? You want me to take a look what you guys got going there? Is it working? Okay. All right. So with the user ID here, I'm going to go look up the left function. So I'm going to go to the formulas tab, click on the text category. And if I go down the list here, I'm going to point and click on the left function. So when I click on left, again on the PC, it takes me into the function arguments dialog box. On the Mac, it displays the formula builder. Okay, so now it wants to know what text I want to work with, okay, and how many characters I want to extract. And you can see down below, it's telling me what the syntax is here. So the first thing it wants to know is what text do you want to extract from, okay? And that's going to be Nicole's first name on the other sheet. So I'm going to click on the employee list tab, and I'll click on Nicole's first name, okay? And then the next thing it wants to know is how many characters starting from the left do you want to extract, okay? So I just want to extract just the first character. So for the number of characters, I'm going to type in 1, okay? So I'm simply saying take whatever's in cell A2 and extract the first character, okay? So if I just press enter to complete that, cool, it's got the first letter of Nicole's name extracted, okay? And now what I want to do is take the result of the left function and just glue her last name on there. So we're going to use the and trick again, the ampersand. So I'm going to click at the end of my left function, type in the and symbol on my keyboard, and then I'm going to go click on the cell that's got Nicole's last name. So I'll click on the employee list tab, and then on the employee list tab, I'm just going to click on cell B2. So there I'm just saying take the first character of her first name and join her last name together with that. I press enter, and cool, I've got Nicole's user ID, and you should be able to just do the double click trick and copy that down to the other rows.
If we want to put a dot and dot Kidman.
Okay, yes, so to do that, I could just say left, and then so you want to join the first character of her first name, a dot, and then her last name. So yeah, what we could do there is just go after the first and symbol there. I'll type in quote dot quote. So every text you really want to show, you need to enclose that in quotes. And then I'm going to add another and symbol there. Okay. So does that make sense what I've got there? So take the first letter of what's in A2, glue a dot onto that, a period symbol, and then glue her last name. So is that the kind of thing you wanted to see? Okay, so now you're a concatenator, man. All right, so that's just so it could be you know a period symbol, a dash, a comma. It's all good. So I think I'm gonna skip over the department column here. I've got a lot of stuff I want to show you guys, and we don't have that much time in class tonight, so I'm going to try to cover as much stuff as I can. So I'm going to jump over here to the location column. Okay, so in the location column, actually the columns E and F, I've got location and extension. Now if you look at the data, if you go back to the employee list tab, in the office, in column G on the employee list tab, whoever put this data together, they've got the office location and the extension all in one cell. Okay, and I need to pull that out and show the office location in one column and the extension in another column. Okay, so if all of the locations were the same length, I could just use the left function. So if I just wanted to extract like HQ out of here, I could just say give me the first two characters, right? And that would be done. But the problem is some of these guys are the location is HQ and some of them are central. So central is 7 characters. So really what I want to tell Excel is look at this text, and you'll notice the pattern here is after their location there's a dash character. So really what I want to tell Excel is find where search for where the dash is and extract everything up to that point. Okay? So there's another function in Excel called the search function. And with the search function you can say look at this text and tell me what position an item is. So I could say search for the dash for Nicole's location and extension, and it would return the number 3 because the dash is the 3rd character from the left, right? For these guys who are central, it would return the number 8 because the dash is the 8th character from the left. So by itself, that's kind of a big so what. But what we're going to do is take the result of the search function and put it inside the left function. Remember, with the left function, you say, this is the text I want to work with, and how many characters do I want to extract? So we're going to get tricky here and combine several different functions together. So when I do something more complex like that, when I create an expression that uses multiple functions, I like to do a building block approach. Just create one piece, test that out, and then add complexity to that. So that's where we're going with it. I'm going to go back to my requirement tab. And on the requirement tab, I'm going to go ahead and first of all, let me work with the search function. So the search function is another example of a text function. So on the requirement tab where I want to see the location, I'm on the formulas tab here. I'm going to go to the text category again and look down the list and click on the search function. So when you choose that, it shows you in the formula builder or in the function arguments dialog box on the PC. And again, it's the formula builder is guiding you through the steps of what you want. So right now it's telling me find text. That's the text you're looking for. So the text I want to search on is the dash character. So in the find text box, I'm going to type in the dash character. Okay, that's what I'm looking for. That's what I want to find. And then the next question is, where are you looking for that dash? So I'm going to click in the within text box. I'm looking for the dash character in Nicole's location and extension. So I'll click in the within text box. Then I'm going to go to the employee list tab. And I'm going to click on cell G2 where Nicole's location and extension are. Okay, and then the third piece is the start number. That's which character you want to start from. Okay. And notice, you guys, in this case, it tells me if omitted, it assumes 1. So it assumes, for some of these fields, there's already default. So strictly speaking, if I want to start from the first character, I don't need to type anything in here. It just always assumes you're going to start searching from the first character. But if you want to start searching from something other than the first character, you could type that number in there. So that's it. I'm going to go ahead and just press the Enter key, and that returns the number 3. Okay, that's because the dash in her location extension is the 3rd character from the left. Okay, now I don't want to actually extract the first 3 characters because then it would show HQ dash. So what I really want to tell Excel is find where the dash character is, and I want to extract one less character than that. So I'm going to take the result of my search function and subtract 1 from it. So I'll click at the very end of my expression. I'm going to type in -1. And then press enter. So that's the number of characters I actually want to extract for her location. I want to extract just the first 2 characters. Okay? You guys doing okay with this? Kind of? We're not in the shallow end of the pool. We're getting in the deep end of the swimming pool here now, right? So getting a little tricky, getting a little complicated, kind of trying to keep it interesting for you guys. So, question? Yeah.
So where is that?
So we're saying the search. So the question is what's going on with the search function? So the search function is saying search this text, and you tell it what you're looking for. I'm looking for the dash character, and I want to know where that is. And so I use the search function on this. It tells me it's the third character from the left. Okay? But I want to basically tell itself, find where the dash is and extract one less character than that. So that's why I'm saying search for the dash, that returns number 3, and then I just type in -1, and that gives me the first 2 characters. That's the number of that's the number of characters HQ is from the beginning.
So we're not getting the characters themselves, but rather
It,
how many
yeah, exactly. So the first thing we're trying to do is figure out how many characters we want to extract, and then once we've got that, then we're going to use that inside the left function. Because remember, the left function, you say what text you want to work with and how many characters you want to extract from the left. So I'm going to use the result of search -1 for that. Okay. So again, we're kind of doing this as a building block, doing it one piece at a time, right? So I'm going to go. Yeah, go ahead, Eva.
What if we have more than one dash in the?
Okay, so you can get really tricky with this kind of stuff. So imagine you had like some product ID numbers where they had a dash somewhere in there. So if you knew, you could say, so you could get really tricky with this. You could search. You could actually do a search function inside of a search function. So say, okay, search for the first one. That would tell me it's the third character from the left. Then I could use another search function saying, starting from the third character, search after that. So you can get crazy complex with this stuff, and people write these gnarly long formulas. You know, you can actually store up to like over 8,000 characters in one cell. So people create these crazy long formulas to do some of this kind of stuff.
So is it possible for us to do regular expression in Excel?
Say that again?
Is it possible for us to do regular expression in Excel, like to capture some pattern of the words?
Yeah, they're actually, you know, they're like kind of like I think Matt was asking earlier about extracting text, splitting text into different things. I want to show you guys how to do this with functions, and there's also some other cool tools to extract stuff into columns too. So there's always more than one way to do stuff in Excel. But right now I'm going to go back to the requirement tab, and I have the number of characters that I want to extract. Now I'm just going to wrap the left function around that. So remember, again, the left function, you specify what text you want to work with and how many characters you want to extract. So I'm going to take the result of the search -1 as the number of characters. So we're going to get tricky here. I'm going to click at the beginning of this expression. I'll type in the left function. I'll just start typing the word left, and then an open parentheses. Okay? And as soon as I type it in, Excel's giving me a little tip there. It's showing me what the parts of the left function are. So it's waiting right now. The text field is highlighted. It's waiting for me to tell it where the text I want to manipulate is. So I'm going to click on the Employee List tab, and then click on Nicole's location and extension in cell G2. Okay, so that's my text. And then remember, for when we've got more than one piece in a function, each of the pieces needs to be separated by a comma. So after I've clicked on cell G2, I'm going to type the comma symbol on my keyboard. Okay, and that's going to be the number of characters. All right, so I've got an open parentheses at the beginning of my left function. I also need to have a closed parentheses at the very end. So I'm going to go ahead and bug my cursor at the very end of the expression on the formula bar and type a closed parentheses. So you can see we're starting to get pretty complex with using one function inside another. So this will be the test, you guys. If you press enter, see if it works. If you got all your commas and your parentheses and all your characters in the right place, you should be able to press enter, and it should extract just HQ. Okay, and then if I copy that down to the other rows, because I don't have data in the next column, I have to drag down, but if I drag that down, it should extract the location for everybody. Okay, so you can see how like I say, we can get really complex with by combining functions, and you know, I'll be honest, I've been working with Excel for a long time, and I still see spreadsheets that other people create where they put different functions together in really clever combinations. So you can do some really cool stuff by combining these functions together. But the big takeaway there is the way we did it. First of all, we built it one piece at a time and added complexity. Sometimes what I'll do is create one function in one column, another function in another column, and then copy and paste to put them together. So that's, you know, when you do some of these really complex stuff, that might be a good way to do it. All right, so anybody have any questions or need any help? Yeah, go ahead.
Can you read that straight across the formula bar? Like summarize it?
What this means?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So here, the left function, you know what, if I just click in here, it kind of gives me a tip and tells me what it's doing. So the left function needs two pieces. What text you want to work with, and how many characters starting from the beginning you want to extract. Okay? So in my case, the text that I want to work with is what's coming from the employee list sheet, cell G2.
Okay.
Okay? And then the second piece for the left function is how many characters you want to extract, and I'm using the result of the search minus 1. Okay? So if you if I click over in the search function, see how it's actually, let me click inside here. Yeah, if I click anywhere inside here, it's telling me what the pieces are there. Okay, see how you can kind of click on it in the formula bar? And that's kind of a cool way to figure out a function, you know, or when you got multiple functions somebody else created. Sometimes you're looking at this and you're saying, what the heck are they doing? So you can just click on it and read each piece there. Okay, let's see, what else did I want to mention here? I think, yeah, so, all right, so now I'm going to give you guys a challenge, and I'm not going to tell you how to do this one, but based on what we've done already, you know, you guys know how to look up functions and get some help on this stuff. So if we use the left function, what I want to do for the extension here, back on the employee list tab, you can see if you look at column G, the extension is the last 4 numbers. So, for example, Nicole's extension is 2188, Jeff's is 2055. So I want to extract the last 4 characters. So you guys tell me, if we use the left function to extract from the beginning, what are we going to use to extract from the end? Left and... You are correct. Yeah. So you guys know how to build a function on your own. So I'm not going to do that. I'm going to challenge you guys to do that on your own. Right? So I would just go to the requirement tab, get your cursor where you want the extension to go. This is a text function, so you can go to the formulas tab, look up the right function, and build that on your own. Okay. So why don't you guys take a few minutes to practice that on your own, and let me know if you have any questions or need any help. Doing okay with it? You already get the right function? So you're, okay, you've done this before? But you can just see where we're going with it. And just, okay, that's good. It makes me happy that it's all clicking. So you haven't done it before, but you're picking this up. That's excellent. Excellent. I think those Microsofties might like you. Isn't that what they call them, Microsofties?
I don't know. They call them mock.
That's what they call themselves?
Mock.
Mock?
M-A-C-H.
Not Mac. Mock.
Mock.
Okay, I'm just kidding. They're not, you wouldn't want to confuse that with Mac, right?
That would make it very controversial.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
No, Mac, they call it just mock because of some Microsoft Academy. This is full form to the acronym.
Oh, okay, yeah. I got it. Yeah. All right, who has any questions or needs any help on what we're doing here? You guys are just so mellow. Eric, you doing okay with it? You got it done? Okay, cool. So I don't have an exercise on it, but we've got the left function, we've got the right function. Another function that some of you guys may want to play around with in the future, there's the mid function. So I can extract text from the middle. With the mid function, you can say, I want to work with this text, and I want to, starting at this character, I want to extract some characters. So that's another one that we can use to extract text. So let me catch up with you guys. You know, if you know a function, you can just type it in off the top of your head. So instead of looking up, let me demonstrate it. Just type in equal, the word right, open parentheses, then it's waiting for me to fill in the text. I'll go to the employee list tab, click on the extension here, type in a comma, and then actually the number of characters is 4. Oops. Okay. So cool. I just double click and I've got all those names copied down. All right, so everybody okay with that? All right, so now here's a pretty common scenario. Actually, you know what? Let's do this. Let's go ahead and let's take this sheet, and I want to make a copy of it because right now, you know, a fairly common scenario is you take all the information from the employee list tab, you clean it up in the requirement tab, and you might want to deliver the results to somebody else, right? But the problem with all the stuff on the requirement tab is it's dependent. All these are formulas or functions that refer to the stuff on the employee list tab. So, as a result, I might want to just give the requirement sheet to somebody without having to have the employee list. So what I want to do is convert all of these formulas to the actual values. So to do that, I'm going to click anywhere in the data. Oops. And there's a keyboard shortcut that will let you select all the data out to the first blank row or first blank column. So on the PC, it's a control key. On the Mac, it's command. So what would be really easy to remember if you want to select all the data? What would be a good keyboard shortcut? Command A. So try that. Click your cursor in the data, do Command A. On the PC, it's Control A. And cool, that highlights everything out to, that highlights what they call the current region. It'll highlight everything out to the first blank column and down to the first blank row. So some of you guys were talking about managing, wrangling really large data sets. Control A is a really cool trick. Even if I've got, thousands of rows of data, I can quickly highlight the whole thing. All right, so now that I've got this highlighted, I want to copy the data. So I'm going to go back to the Home tab, and I'm just going to use the copy command. Okay. And now I want to paste, but I don't want to just do a regular paste. So on the Home tab, I'm going to go to the paste command and click on the drop down by the paste command. And there's lots of different options here. So instead of doing a regular paste, there's this option to paste the values. So if I choose paste values, cool. Now if you look at the data there, you can see up on the formula bar, it's not a formula anymore, it's the actual data. So that's kind of a real world scenario where you clean up the data and then you convert it from the formulas to the actual values. So let's see where we're at here. We don't have that much more, it's just time flies when you're having fun here. So let's see, I'm trying to figure out, let's just do, I'm going to do a few logical functions with you guys, okay? So check out the employee bonus tab. And so, you guys probably have never seen this spreadsheet before. And here's a cool trick. You get a spreadsheet from somebody else, you're trying to figure out what cells are numbers, what cells are formulas. So, I could spend a lot of time here, like clicking on the cell B6 here, and I can see, okay, that's a number, and then I click on total sales in column F, and I can see, oh, they're using the sum function there. Okay, so you can spend a lot of time doing detective work to try to figure out a spreadsheet that somebody else created. So there's a really cool feature in Excel if you go to the Formulas tab. On the Formulas tab, over on the right side here, there's an option to show formulas. So you click on that and look what happens. Whoa, now I can see all the formulas in the whole sheet. So that's a really cool tool when I'm trying to get my head around a spreadsheet that somebody else built that I need to do some work on, or if I'm trying to troubleshoot a spreadsheet that I'm working on, now I can see all the formulas in all the cells. So you can see they've got the sum function in column F, they're using a multiplication formula for commission in column H. And if you scroll over to the right, they've got somewhere over on the right here, they've got the a sum function for total compensation. Okay, so now that you can see what formulas are going on in the spreadsheet, I don't want to see the formulas anymore, so I'm going to click on the Show Formulas button to get it back to where it was. Okay, so in this spreadsheet, I want to do a calculation for the goal bonus. Okay, so the rules for bonuses for these guys, these are basically some sales figures here. So the rules are, each of these guys has a total sales that adds up all these different categories here, and then each of these guys has a goal, and the rule is for their goal bonus, if they got total sales that's greater than or equal to their goal, then I want to take the total sales and calculate a 1% bonus. Okay. If they didn't meet their goal, then they don't get a bonus. They get 0. Okay? So to do that calculation, there's another cool function in Excel called the if function. And the if function has 3 different parts. The first part of the if function is a logical test, something that's going to be true or false. So I can say, is this greater than this? Is this less than this? Does this equal this? Something that's either going to be true or false. So the first part is a logical test. The second piece of the if function is, what do you want to do if the logical test is true? Okay, and then the third piece is, what do you want to do if that test is false? Okay, so it's got 3 different parts to it. So like I was saying earlier, people who use Excel all day, every day, they just type this stuff in off the top of their head. But if you're not using a function like the if function all the time, it helps to look it up. So just like I did with my other functions, I've got my cursor where I want my goal bonus to show up. I'm going to go to the Formulas tab again. And on the Formulas tab, I'm going to go to the Logical category. And when I click on the Logical category in the Formulas tab, you can see a list of all the different logical functions. So there's the if function. I'll click on if. And here's the formula builder, or again on the PC, it'll show it in that function arguments dialog box. There's the different pieces, the logical test, value of true, and value of false. So the first thing I want to do is create this logical test. I want to test, did the guy get total sales greater than or equal to his goal? So in the logical text box, I'm going to click on where it says total sales. Okay, F6, and then I'll type in the greater than symbol and then equal. So greater than, equal. And I want to compare F6 to the number in column G. So I'm going to point at this first guy's goal here, which is in cell G6. So I'm just testing, is F6 greater than or equal to G6? And you can see in this case, it says, yeah, that's true. This guy did get total sales greater than his goal. Okay, so now I'm going to click in the value of true. So what do I want to do if that logical test I just created is true? He should get a bonus of 1% of his total sales. So in the value of true box, I'm going to click on the total sales. And then I'll type the asterisk symbol on my keyboard to multiply. And after I type the asterisk symbol on the keyboard to multiply, I'm going to point and click at the bonus rate, which is in cell H3. Okay, so I'm just saying, do this test. If the test is true, do this calculation. Okay, now I'm thinking ahead, and as I copy this formula down later on to the next row, do you want the reference to F6 and G6 to change to F7 and G7 and 8 and 9 and so on? Do you want those to change as you copy the formula down? Yeah, you do want to. What about the reference to H3? As I copy that to the next row, should that change to H4 and H5 and H6? No. So what are you going to do?
Absolute.
Okay, so that's the concept. We want to change it from a relative reference to, which means it's going to change when I copy the formula. I want to change it to an absolute reference, which means it's going to stay the same as I copy it. Okay, so how do I do that?
The dollar signs.
Dollar signs, okay. And that's right. You can type the dollar signs. The dollar signs tell Excel when I copy this formula, don't change the cell reference. So you're right. You can type the dollar signs. What's the keyboard shortcut to do that on the Mac? Well, that's on the PC, I think. You can actually, on a Mac, unless you've changed the keyboard, I think the native keys for F4 is going to do a Windows thing, right? So the kind of the native keyboard shortcut on the Mac is Command T. On the PC, it's F4. But you can customize your system preferences on a Mac so you can use the F4 key if you want to. But yeah, even if you haven't customized the preferences on the Mac, with my cursor on the reference to H3, I just hold the Command key and press the letter T, and that does the dollar signs for me. Okay, so if you don't remember Command T on the Mac or F4 on the PC, you guys are right. You can always manually type in the dollar signs, but the F4 or the Command T keyboard shortcuts are cool ones to remember. Okay, so I press enter, and to complete that, oh, I'm sorry, I've got, so the value of true. Now, what happens if this logical test is false? That is, if the guy didn't get total sales greater than his goal. In that case, he doesn't get a bonus. So I'm going to go to the value of false box, and I'm going to type in 0. he doesn't get anything. Okay? And from there, I'll go ahead and just press the enter key, and the first guy gets a nice little bonus. Okay? So if you look at that formula, that function up on the formula bar, you know, it's pretty gnarly, but the way we use the formula builder or the function arguments dialog box to just click on cells step by step makes it easy to build some of these more complex functions. Okay, and you should be able to just copy that function down, and you get all your formulas for all these guys. And because of the way we thought about the relative versus absolute references, if you click on some of these other cells and check your formula, you can see the reference to H3 stayed absolutely the same. It's an absolute reference. All right. So here we're doing one if function. Now, just like real life, you can get really complex with this stuff, you guys. You can actually combine up to 64 different if functions inside of each other. So I just want to put that in the back of your mind. You can say, okay, do this test. If the test is true, do this. And then if the test is not true, do another if statement. So, for example, you know, in like the movie business, they've got all these crazy contracts where if a film grosses over a certain amount, you get this percent. If it grosses over that amount, you get this percent. So you could write some really complex formulas. I know some of the people over at the studios write these crazy formulas to figure out what kind of points everybody's going to get on a film. The financial guys do that. So just to put that idea in the back of your mind that you can combine a whole bunch of different if functions together to get really complex. All right, so we're kind of running out of time here. I'm trying to give you guys as much as I can in the amount of time we have here. I think the last topic that I want to spend some time with you guys on is a really cool feature in Excel called pivot tables. So how many of you guys have worked with pivot tables already? Okay, so pivot tables are, I always say pivot tables are one of the reasons Bill Gates makes the extremely big bucks. They're a really cool way to summarize large data sets. So let's navigate to the last sheet in this workbook. I'm going to jump over here to, the last sheet is called invoices. So go to the invoices sheet, and I'm not going to use this formula builder for what we're going to do next. I'm just going to close the formula builder window if you still have that open. So we've got this huge amount of information here, and I'm trying to figure out how many rows I have here. So how can I move quickly to the last row before there's a blank row? I want to get to the last row real quickly. Yeah, exactly. So you can use the command on the PC it's control arrow, on the Mac it's command arrow. So I press command arrow, and that jumps me down to the last row before there's a blank. Okay, so it's down, so I can see I've got 2,156 rows of data here. So it's a pretty big data set. I'm going to use the command up arrow to move back up to the top. Okay, so I'm trying to get my head around what's going on with this data. These are a bunch of sales transactions. So you can see we've got the customer name in column A, location in column B, my sales guys in column C. Got some order date, ship date information. We got all these weird product names here, and then they've got the unit price, the quantity, and then in column J, they're calculating what the extended price is. So, you know, you get a big data set like this, and I'm trying to understand, okay, what are the total sales by salesperson? Who are my best customers? What are my best selling products? Okay, so you could spend a lot of time writing formulas to try to summarize that kind of stuff, but pivot tables are a really cool way to summarize large and do analysis on large data sets. So before you build a pivot table, you might need to clean up your data. So if you want to create a pivot table, you want to basically have the information in a list form like it is here. You want to have a one-row descriptive column heading. You don't want to have any blank rows or blank columns. And you don't want to have any subtotals or grand totals, just the raw information. So sometimes you might get something like this. Like, check this out. I've got a list here. It looks like it's organized by different customers. So you might get some raw data where instead of having the name of the customer and the location repeated, it might look something like this, where they're just showing the the name of the customer and the location once. So if I've got something like that, I can't do a pivot table on it. I can't, if I wanted to like group things by company name here, I can't have these blank rows. So honestly, sometimes it takes more time to clean up the data, to scrub the data, than it does to do the pivot tables. But in this, and sometimes I get questions all the time. People say, well, why can't I make a good pivot table out of this data? Well, it's because it's not, as they say, normalized. So you might need to scrub it up a little bit. So here I'm going to just undo this and get this back to where it was. So this data is in good shape, and I'm trying to figure out what's the total sales by salesperson. So who's my best salesperson? Who's my best customer? Okay. So I want to create a pivot table to answer those questions. So I've got my cursor on any one cell inside the data, and then check out the Insert tab. If you go to the Insert tab, there's a couple options for pivot tables. So one of the options under pivot tables is recommended pivot tables. So if I click on that, and this is a feature they just added in 2016. So if some of you guys are using older versions of Excel, I don't think they have recommended pivot tables. But if you choose recommended pivot tables, it'll open up a dialog box and it just creates a pivot table for you. So it guessed, and it assumed I wanted one row for each guy here and one column for each sales date here. Okay, so it just built a pivot table for me automatically. Now I'm going to do an undo on that. So you can have it create the pivot table for you. I'm going to do an undo and get back to, let's see if I can get out of here. Close this window and undo this. Yeah, so I'm going to do an undo, and I'm going to go back to the Invoices tab. So instead of using just one of the preset pivot tables there, I want to show you guys how you can create a pivot table from scratch. So I'm going to go with my cursor back in the raw data. I'm going to go to the Insert tab. And in the Insert tab, I'm just going to click on the first option, Pivot Table. Okay, and so when I do that, I get this dialog box. The first thing Excel wants to know is where is the data that you want to do the pivot table on, and it assumes based on my cursor position that everything out to the first blank column and down to the first blank row is the data set that I want to analyze. So here, just grabbed all the data that we have here. You can also you may want to take advantage of range names for this. So if you add data later on by using a range name as the data source, that's kind of a cool feature to put together with pivot tables. And notice there's also an option to use an external source. So the deal there is you might have some data that lives out in a SQL database or a Microsoft Access database. You don't need to export it out of that environment and then import it into Excel. As long as you have a network connection and can point to it, you can use that external data. Okay, and then I have an option of either putting the pivot table on a new sheet or an existing sheet. I'm going to go ahead and leave all this stuff exactly as it is and click on OK. And when I do that, check it out. And the screens here look a little different on the PC versus the Mac. But first of all, I get this pivot table placeholder. It's just a pivot table with nothing in it. And then notice, you guys, there's some new tabs at the top that weren't there before. The pivot table Analyze and Design tab. So those are what are called contextual tabs. They only show up when you're inside a pivot table. And then I've got this box here that's got a list of my different fields, and I've got these different boxes I can just drag the fields into. So I want to see, I want to know what my total sales are by salesperson. So in the list of field names here, I'm going to click on the checkbox for salesperson. Okay. Now, again, the behavior on the PC and the Mac are slightly different. So here, when I clicked on that on the Mac, it assumed that I wanted to summarize that data. It put in here, and because the salesperson field is non-numeric, it's a text field, it assumes I wanted to use the count function on that. So it tells me how many total sales I've got. Okay. Actually, I want to see a list of my sales guys and what their total sales are. So I think the behavior for those of you guys using the PC is different. When you clicked on the checkbox for salesperson, it put it in the rows box. Okay. So for those of you guys who are running on a Mac, I'm going to take the salesperson field over from the values box, I'm just going to drag it over to the rows box. Okay? So cool. When I put the salesperson in the rows box, look what happens. Now I've got an alphabetical list. So instead of the repeats, I've got a unique list, an alphabetical list of all my salespeople. And I want to know what their total sales are. So I'm going to scroll down the list of fields here, and I'm going to click on the checkbox for extended price. And when I do that, because that's a numeric field, it puts that in the values box. And because it's a numeric field, it assumes that I want to get a sum of it. So cool, look at that. I just took 2,156 rows of information and summarized it to a very high level here. So like I said, pivot tables are pretty cool. And you can't tell everybody how easy this is to do, okay? So you have to maintain the whole thing. A lot of people think, oh, pivot tables are really hard and complex. So you can't tell everybody how easy pivot tables are. You have to maintain the idea that pivot tables are an advanced and complex feature, and people who know how to do this stuff should be highly paid. Don't tell anybody otherwise, okay? So that's an example of a simple pivot table, okay? So now the data is in alphabetic order by sales guy. I want to know, actually, first of all, how many of you guys are bugged by the fact that the decimals don't line up here? Does that bug you? Decimals for the numbers don't line up? Usually Excel people, that makes them crazy. They want their decimals to all line up. So here's one thing I see that gets people into trouble with pivot tables. Your inclination would be to just highlight these cells and change the format, right? But what happens is we're going to take a look with a pivot table. You can move the data around, and if you're just formatting these specific cells, as you move the data around, you're going to have to reformat it. That's one of the things I hear people say all the time. Every time I move the data, I've got to reformat it. That's such a pain. So when you're working with pivot tables, instead of formatting specific cells, you want to format the field. So one way to format that field is to go back over to the values box here, where it says sum of extended. Click on the little icon to the right, okay? And cool, that takes me to this field settings dialog box where I can change the descriptive column heading. You can also change what kind of calculation you're doing. So instead of doing the sum function, if I wanted to get a count of how many sales each guy had, I could choose the count function, okay? So I wanted you guys to see how you can change what calculation you're doing, but I want to actually change the formatting of the numbers. So to do that, I'm going to click on the number button in the corner here. And when I click on the number button, it takes me to the Format Cells dialog box. But now I'm going to be changing all the numbers. So I'm going to go ahead and change the number format. I'll go in the list of categories. I click on number. And then I'm going to knock the decimal places down to 0. So I have just whole dollars. And then to make it easier to read, I'll turn on the checkbox for the thousand separators. Okay. I'll click on OK. And then OK my way out of this dialog box. And cool. Everybody feel better now that all your numbers are lined up? Okay, so you don't want to highlight the specific cell, change what the field looks like. Okay. Now I want to see who's got the most sales. So instead of looking at these names alphabetically, I want to see the person with the top sales at the top of the list. So I'm going to right click on any of my numbers. And when I right click on my numbers, I get a shortcut menu that includes sort. So I'm going to go ahead and choose sort largest to smallest. Cool, now I can see that Margaret Peacock is my best salesperson. Margaret's just killing it. She's outselling everybody. Okay. So, I mean, we took the 2,156 rows of data and we're looking at it at the 50,000 foot level. So you can see how pivot tables let you see stuff at a very high level. Now, let's just do a few more tricks before we wrap up here. I want to see a let's see. Let me just see here. Oh, this is a really cool trick. You got to check this out, you guys. Let me delete this. So check this out. The data in my pivot table. These numbers are all summary numbers of all the sales on the invoices tab, right? So if I look at my invoices tab. Margaret, there's some sales. There's one of Margaret's rows. So the pivot table is basically taking all these rows for her and adding them up, right? So now that I've summarized the numbers for Margaret, I want to see where that number came from. So this is a really cool trick, I think, in Excel. Just point at the number here, point at Margaret's number, and do a double click.
Oh,
And look what happens. It creates a whole new sheet, and it's just got Margaret's numbers in it. So it extracted her numbers out. Those of you guys who were in last week's class, we talked about tables. So it extracted all of Margaret's numbers into a new sheet and put it into a table. So now I could do more pivot tables on this. If I want to analyze where Margaret's numbers are coming from, I could say, okay, give me a total of Margaret's numbers by product or whatever. So that's pretty cool. Just a double click and you've extracted all this detailed information. Is that working? Again, I didn't hear anybody go, ooh or ah. That's like, well, actually, Ibo, you kind of gave a reaction on that, didn't you? You're like, whoa.
whoa.
So anyway, that's the fun stuff. I'm going to go back to sheet 2 where I created my pivot table, and I want to see a breakdown now of I want to not just know what the total sales are by each person here. I want to know where they're selling. So I'm going to add another level to the pivot table. So I'm going to go up to my field list, and in the field list, I'm going to take the country field, and if I want to add that here, I'm going to take the country field and just drag it down to the rows box just underneath the salesperson. So I'm going to my field list here. I'm pointing at country. I'm going to hold the left mouse button down and just drag down, and I'm going to put the country field underneath salesperson. And cool, look at that. Now I've got Margaret's sales, and I've got an alphabetical list of all the countries she's selling into. So we've got 2 levels, and when we're in here, I'll go ahead and I'll right click on one of my country numbers, and I'll choose the sort option, largest to smallest. So now I can see Margaret's my best salesperson, and I can see her 3 top countries are US, Germany, and France. So I'm starting to get more insight into what's going on with my numbers here. And once you've got multiple levels of the pivot table, notice to the left of each of these names there's a little minus symbol, so I can click on that and collapse the data. So I can look at just Margaret's total number, or click on the plus to see all the details. I could also, if I want to collapse the whole pivot table to the highest level, if you go to the Pivot Table Analyze tab, there's this button there's buttons here to expand or collapse the field. So I've got Margaret's name selected in the pivot table. If I click on Collapse Field, cool, see how that collapses it up to the highest level, and then I can drill in and see the details. Okay, so you can see why pivot tables are pretty cool. I'm going to go ahead and expand the field again here. Okay, now instead of seeing each salesperson and where they're selling, I want to see each country and who's selling into that country. So to do that, I'm just going to flip my fields around here. I'm going to point at the salesperson field, and I'm just going to click and drag it down underneath the country field. So I just point at the salesperson field and hold the left mouse button down and drag down underneath the country field. I'm going to let go. It flips the data. So we just pivoted the data. Now you can see why they call it a pivot table, how you can pivot the data around. And so again, you can see USA is the best country. Who's selling the most in each country here? So if you get somebody to actually pay you money to do something like this, that'd be pretty fun, I think, wouldn't it? Just sit there playing with data all day long. But usually it's like, are you done with that? Here's some more work, right? So it's not always that much fun. So here, now instead of having 1 row for each country and 1 row for each salesperson, I want 1 row for each country, and I want 1 column for each salesperson. So check that out. I'm going to take the salesperson field and drag it up to the columns box. So again, just like I drag these fields around, I'll just point at sales and drag salesperson up into the columns box here. Let go. Cool. Same data, just lay it out differently. Okay? So sometimes when I'm creating pivot tables, I'm not even sure of what I'm looking for. You just by dragging the data around, sometimes you see trends of the data and stuff just jumps out at you that you wouldn't have seen by just playing with your data. Now, another cool thing I can do, maybe I don't want to see all my sales guys, so I can filter the data here. So see where it says column labels, there's a little drop down to the right of column labels. I can click on the drop down there, and when I click on that, I have these check boxes, so I can toggle on the check boxes to control who I want to see data for. So I could do that for my sales guys. I could also filter by country here as well. So you can, by using filtering and sorting, you can zoom in on specific items here. All right. Again, I'm kind of just trying to fly over some of this stuff really quickly. Just have a few minutes to go here. I'm going to go ahead and close this dialog box for right now. And another way to filter the data is to take the salesperson field and drag it to this filters box. So try that. I'll go ahead and take the salesperson field and drag it to the filters box. Okay. And cool, now I have a drop down at the top here. I can click on that, and when I click on the drop down, I can just pick and choose. So I'll turn off the select all checkbox, and I just want to look at the numbers for Andrew, and then I can also say I want to look at the numbers for Ann. So I'll just turn on the checkboxes for the first two people here. Okay, so that's pretty cool. The only problem with this, the only thing I don't like about this filters box is, you know, if I'm filtering on more than one person, if I printed this out and gave it to somebody, it's like, what am I looking at? Multiple items. What multiple items, right? So that's not really intuitive. There's another cool feature that we have in Excel for filtering data in pivot tables. It's called slicers, and slicers are just a very graphic, visual way to do filtering. So check this out. I'm going to turn on the select all checkbox. Okay, and then I'm going to go, or I can just do the clear filter option also here, and then I'm going to close this dialog box. Okay, and I'm going to get rid of the salesperson field for right now. So I'm going to turn off the checkbox for salesperson and remove that from the list. Okay, now I want to add a slicer. So with my cursor anywhere in the pivot table, check out on the pivot table analyze tab. There's this cool feature, insert slicer. So I'm going to click on insert slicer. And when I click on that, that gives me a list of all the fields. I want to filter the data on the salesperson field. So I'm going to click on the checkbox for salesperson. And then I'm going to go ahead and click on OK. And cool, that's a slicer. Notice when I do the slicer, I get this new tab here, but this is a much more intuitive way to do filtering. Now I can just click on a guy's name in the slicer and it filters the data. So that's pretty cool. So you could give this to one of your, create this for an executive, and they could have a good old time all day long just clicking on this to do all kinds of filtering. And you guys know you can click on one item and do a shift click to select more than one, or you can use the control key or the command key to select non-adjacent items. So if I hold the command key or the control key on the PC, I can select here. I just selected the first, the third, and the fifth here. So I just wanted you guys to see slicers are a very cool feature for just playing with your data. Okay. So you guys know more now about advanced functions in Excel, how to build functions. I do some pretty cool analysis with that, and then we spent some time here on pivot tables, which I think are really a super powerful way to analyze data. So hopefully we've opened some doors for you guys, and all these are big topics, much more than we can cover in real depth in just a couple of hours, but hopefully you guys are fired up and want to explore this stuff in more detail. So I'd encourage you to check out Microsoft's website, and they've got lots of articles and tutorials and videos on how to take some of the things we've done here and take it up to the next level. All right, so again, you're sworn to secrecy about how completely easy Excel is, right? It's a complex program, and you should be really well paid if you know how to do this stuff. All right, so hopefully we'll see you guys around. If you have your classmates who are interested, next week we're going to do the basics class again, and then the week after we're going to do this session again. So tell the folks, we got some empty seats here. Okay, so hopefully we'll see you guys around the ranch, and maybe we can do let these guys know. Maybe we can do a Visual Basic class and get into some macros and do some more advanced automation with Excel.
VLOOKUP's not
You know what? I would have liked to get the VLOOKUP tonight. I just tried to balance what we can cover in 2 hours. So that'd be a top.
In 2 weeks, I can insist on doing that.
Say that again.
If I come in 2 weeks, I can recommend we do that.
Okay, yeah, and I'll try to adapt it. And so, yeah, if you guys want to come back next week, I'll try to cover some different topics. Okay.
Thank you.
All right, my pleasure. I hope it makes your work easier. Okay. Have a great evening, you guys.